Democratic voters in New Hampshire chose their party's gubernatorial nominee Tuesday night in hopes of flipping the governor's mansion blue in November. Democrat Molly Kelly is vying to unseat Republican incumbent Governor Chris Sununu. Sununu ran uncontested in the GOP primary Tuesday. The position is known as a swing seat. New Hampshire had a Democratic governor for 12 years before Sununu took office in 2016. Michael Graham joins me now from Boston. He's a CBSN political contributor, as well as a columnist for the Boston Herald and politics editor at nhjournal.com. Michael, thanks for being with us. Let's start with this gubernatorial race. Kelly is going up against a popular incumbent Republican governor. How does her bid look for Democrats?
Well, Chris Sununu repeatedly ranks in the top 5 most popular governors in the United States, which is kind of interesting. In fact, 4 of the top 5 most popular governors, 3 of the top 5 are here in New England, which is an interesting story because you have Charlie Baker in Massachusetts and Governor Scott in Vermont. And so no doubt about it, we did some polling at New Hampshire Journal, and Governor Sununu fared well against either of the 2 Democrats who are running. But I think what's interesting beyond the matchup with Molly Kelly is the fact that she had to beat a very passionate, very progressive, far to the left, enthusiastic candidate named Steve Marchand, who's a former mayor of Portsmouth, who really ran kind of on the Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Andrew Gillum model, just really going really far and really making this about we need to be more aggressive and be more bold. And he didn't do well at all. And that's an interesting moment. You have the same thing that's happening in the 1st District in New Hampshire, where the Democrats have chosen Chris Pappas to be their nominee to replace the outgoing Democratic Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter. The 1st Congressional District is the most swingiest district in the country. It's gone back and forth 5 in the last 6 elections. And there were a field of 11, including Levy Sanders, the son of Bernie Sanders. You had some really hardcore environmentalist activists and progressive activists. We want to go get Trump. We want to get rid of Nancy Pelosi. And they picked the most moderate candidate in the field.
How close was it? How close was the race?
It was not very close at all.
Okay.
And the fact is, just quickly on background, Chris Pappas, a third-generation family. His family owns a very popular restaurant in Manchester. Everyone goes there for the chicken tenders and ice cream. And it was one of those. It was a reminder that even in the era of Trump, there are other forces at work. Trump is absolutely the most powerful force, but still local connectivity, people knowing you. Chris Pappas had served as an executive counselor, which is kind of like a board of directors for the state.
Right.
People had voted for him before, they knew him. And so when challenges came out from his left, Maura Sanders, who served in the Obama administration, who just moved here last year, apparently to run in this seat. It's kind of a broad strategy to have veteran women who served in the military run. She didn't get much traction, even though she went after Trump in her ads. The tag on her TV ad was "Let's make America again." And it didn't work because those fundamentals were still in place. The same for Molly Kelly, a former state senator. She had the entire Democratic establishment behind her. And I think that's a reminder that even though sometimes you do have these amazing stories like Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley, that there are places all over the country, in Michigan and Kansas and Texas, where the progressive Democrat in the primaries didn't win. Cynthia Nixon in New York looks like she's going to have a really tough time getting past Andrew Cuomo. She's very exciting, and she's a celebrity, and she's on the left. But it could be the case that the average Democratic voter isn't quite as far to the left as sometimes the storyline makes it seem like.
It could be. And could there be other forces at play as well, like you just mentioned? I mean, you're a local and everybody knows your name, and you've kissed the babies, and you've gone out and you've met everybody. That's local politics. Definitely, you have to do that.
And then that's the point, is that it still matters. That I think in a neutral race or in a district like the district in Boston, where you just had the big upset with Ayanna Pressley, the district was so far to the left and so animated by ideology and by the idea of having a black female representative that poor Michael Capuano, the incumbent, they all liked him. He did a good job. But you're gone, I'm sorry, because these other forces were more powerful. Here in New Hampshire, we have the opposite, where it really was like the local connection. Now, there is an interesting side note. Chris Pappas, if he wins, will be the first openly gay congressman from New Hampshire. But it's barely been part of the conversation. It's really been very much this is somebody that we know, and this is someone that the establishment has gotten behind. Now, I have two losers for you from tonight that you haven't heard mentioned. And the two losers are Bernie Sanders and Congressman Seth Moulton, who's planning on running for president in 2020. Congressman Moulton of Massachusetts has been organizing candidates around the country. He got Maura Sullivan to run in that congressional race. He came up and campaigned for her just 2 days ago. He did not have a good night as he looks ahead to New Hampshire in 2020. Bernie Sanders, not only did his son not do well, I think he was in 6th place when I checked, but both of the candidates who were kind of out of his mold, his end of the party, they both fared poorly. And so if you're thinking about running for president in 2020, now instead of a 2016 Bernie Sanders insurgency, you're starting to think, maybe I need to get these state party leaders like Senator Jeanne Shaheen and Senator Maggie Hassan, behind me. Maybe I do need to reach out to this establishment. Maybe they do have an impact on voters.
Maybe there is something to party politics. All right.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the race for governor for a second, because New Hampshire had a Democratic governor for 12 years before Sununu. He's very, very popular, as you mentioned, top 5 in the country. But looking ahead to the midterms, what is going to be the defining issue in the governor's race?
If Molly Kelly and the Democrats have their way, the defining issue will be Donald Trump. If Governor Sununu has his way, the defining issue will be the economy. The New Hampshire economy is the hottest economy in New England. It's one of the hottest economies in the country. There are more people in New Hampshire working now than have ever worked before. And so I think you're going to see an attempt by Democrats to nationalize the race. And I think you're going to see an attempt by Republicans to keep it focused on what's happening for New Hampshire. The Sununu name is not a new name to American politics or New Hampshire politics. It's a brother who was a senator and a dad who was a governor. And so the people know the Sununu name, the Sununu family. He's been running very much a kind of aw shucks campaign. Like his big hot topic over the summer was he went to the local grocery store chain, and when he got his deli meat, they put the stickers over the zipper. So when you open the bag, it rips the bag. And he happened to, somebody tweeted it, and he happened to retweet it, and it took off all over the state, and it was everyone was laughing about it. But the store changed their policy.
Right.
And once again, it's a reminder that where real people live, that you can talk about Trump and what is he doing to the fabric of American democracy and the Constitution, and then people wake up and say, okay, did I have a job? How are my kids' schools? Is my family safe?
Yeah, local politics is a different beast altogether. But let me ask you this: does Governor Sununu, does he campaign as a Trump loyalist?
Well, he hasn't been a Trump loyalist yet, and so he's not going to go to that step. He's not like some of the governors like Charlie Baker of Massachusetts who have been openly anti-Trump. Chris Sununu has been very careful. For example, when there was talk of sending troops to the border to deal with the families who are coming across the border and the children being taken away from their parents, he preemptively said we will not be sending any New Hampshire guardsmen, even though they were never asked. But at the same time, he doesn't go out of his way to attack or take on Donald Trump. We did some polling at New Hampshire Journal 3 weeks ago. 75% of Republicans have a favorable view of Donald Trump. And this state is very much purple. In fact, that first congressional district we've been talking about, Donald Trump actually carried it, and it reelected a Democratic congresswoman 2 years ago. So there are a lot
work
of
that one out.
Yeah, exactly. And so my point is that you don't have the luxury that you have in, say, Texas to just embrace Trump because there's a lot of big numbers. And you don't have the luxury that you have in Rhode Island or Massachusetts where you can just throw Trump under the bus. You have to play the Trump issue very smart. And so far, the Democrats have not been able to trump Chris Sununu.
Sounds like you really have to think on your feet there. Now, New Hampshire is the first for presidential primaries, but one of the last for state primaries. How does this affect voters?
I think that these late primaries are really, in a way, a disgrace. I used to run campaigns for a living, and I know exactly why you have late primaries in states like Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and New York. It's because incumbents like late primaries. I mean, think about Molly Kelly. She just spent the entire 6 months in a fight with her Democratic opponent. Now she's finally done, and it's only 55 days until the election. So it's very tough for non-incumbents, and that's the way the calendar is set up. Tomorrow, you're going to have in Rhode Island a primary. You have a governor who's kind of in trouble, Governor Raimondo down there. She has a tough primary challenge. And then she turns around, and then the Republican is going to finally get a chance to step up. And here's what's interesting. Think about this for a second. We're expecting a blue wave. I think the Democrats will take the House. But it is theoretically possible that when we wake up the morning after the election in November, the reddest part of America for governorships could be New England. You could go 6 for 6 Republican governors from Connecticut to Maine. Now, wouldn't that be amazing?
Hey, you heard it here first. Michael Graham made the prediction.
No, it's possible. That's all. Oh, my bookie's going to kill me.
No, you make a very good point. It is certainly possible. You know, would that be a first? It'd be a first.
I mean, in the modern era, back in the day, in our parents' grandparents' day, New England was a bastion of republicanism, of liberal republicanism.
Good point.
Back then. But it would be amazing now to have Donald Trump losing congressional seats in Texas and, down south, but then 6 Republicans elected governor in New England. A reminder yet again, Trump is not the only force in politics. And sometimes we in the media get so focused covering him, and I include myself in this, that we forget that, down in the trenches in Michigan and Kansas, you've got people working neighborhood by neighborhood.
Right.
And that will be what helps Democrats. I think the Democrats have really had a good primary season. Most of the candidates they've nominated match their district. So what happens then when Nancy Pelosi takes the gavel and she has a group of hardcore Ocasio-Cortez Democrats who want to, grab the torches, and all these suburban Democrats whose voters didn't send them there to pick fights with Trump or do impeachment. It's going to be a fascinating dynamic, assuming that the Democrats take the House.
Michael, let me ask you one last question quickly, because we don't have a lot of time. You say that the economy is on fire there in New Hampshire. What is most important to New Hampshire voters after the economy?
Well, polls show that they're very focused on how you feel about Trump, and that splits both ways. Certainly a big debate we're having right now is energy prices. The governor just vetoed a couple of bills intended to drive people's energy prices down, and it's caused quite a fuss because it's jobs versus ratepayers. Mm-hmm. So energy prices are a deal, but it's going to come back to the economy again and again. There's not another big issue that trumps that. There's some smaller ones, but it's jobs, economy, and then the future for kids.
All right. Michael Graham, thank you once again for your insight.
My pleasure.